Hello everyone! I'm AYANA, a Vtuber.
Today we'll explain the timeline panel.
Let's begin. Let's start.
In the timeline panel, the layers of objects placed in the composition are displayed separately, so you can edit them while viewing the composition panel. In addition, 3D, shy, motion blur, and other switches are available, so you can adapt a variety of effects to layers. The timeline panel is where you can edit, and it is created automatically when you create a composition. Each time you create a composition, a tab is created at the top of the timeline panel, so you can change the view of the composition and edit it by switching the tab. The switches shown in the timeline panel have many items to make editing easier. If you view all of them, it may be difficult to see when editing, so these switches help us to display or hide the functions if necessary. If the switches are hidden in the timeline panel, you can use the layer switches at the bottom left of the timeline panel to display them. There are 3 layer switches. From left to right, they are layer switches, transfer controls, and in and out duration stretch. The switches for displaying, hiding, and locking video and audio are located at the leftmost position. From left to right, we have 4 switches consisting of show hide layers, audio on/off, show only the specified layer, and lock layer. Show or hide layers. When hidden, it disappears from the composition panel and will not be rendered. Switch to turn on or off the sound of the layer. For layers that do not contain audio, this switch is disabled. Select this switch to display only that layer. The switch can also turn on multiple layers at the same time. Select this switch to lock the contents of the layer so that they cannot be changed. You can also lock multiple layers at the same time. Layer switches pane consists of switches related to layer. Let's take a closer look at each one. You can temporarily hide the layer on the timeline panel by clicking the Shy button. It's just hidden on the timeline panel, but it's displayed as it is on the composition panel. Also, please be aware that it will be displayed when you export the video. The Shy button does not work just by turning it on the timeline panel, so it is enabled when Hide Shy Layers at the top of the timeline panel is turned on. This button becomes a collapse transformation button in the case of a composition layer, and changes to a continuously rasterized button in the case of a vector layer. Collapse transformation is used when you want the layer to reflect the pre-composed settings when you have pre-composed multiple layers and put them together. If the layer is a vector layer, you can edit continuous rasterization while checking with smooth lines without degrading the image, even when enlarged. You can change the image quality of the layer displayed in the composition panel by clicking the Quality and Sampling button. Usually it's bilinear, but every time you click it, it changes to bicubic or draft, and the image quality is degraded. By clicking the Effect button, you can turn on and off the effect applied to the layer. When you put an effect on a layer, it is turned on, but when you click it off, you can turn off all the effects on that layer. The Frame Blend button is a function that interpolates when the playback speed of the layer is slowed down to play smoothly. This button switches between frame mix, pixel motion, and off every time you click it. The frame mix mixes the front and rear frames and interpolates them. Pixel motion automatically generates and interpolates new frames from the previous frames. This button is only enabled when Frame Blend at the top of the timeline panel is turned on. Click the Motion Blur button to turn the motion blur on and off. Similarly, this button is only enabled when Motion Blur at the top of the timeline panel is turned on. Check the Adjustment Layer button if you want the effect applied to the adjustment layer to affect the composition of the layer below it. The 3D Layer button is a button to convert a 2D layer into a 3D layer, and then you can manipulate the layer in a 3D environment. The Mode panel is used to configure settings for drawing modes or track mats. This concludes the explanation of the Timeline panel.
How is everyone doing? Did you understand today's lecture? If you found today's lecture useful, please subscribe. If you have any requests, please let us know in the comments below. See you again for the next lecture. See you soon. Bye-bye.